All right, so today we're going to be diving into Bitcoin and some super trends that start to appear around the end of the year. You kind of see some of these cycles moving. One that I think is interesting is the 2022 adoption ratio of who and where they're going to be investing. We're going to dive into that today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Before we get into this, I want to thank our sponsor of today's episode, and that is Pillar, which is a community-run multi-chain DeFi wallet with one address, low to no gas fees and in-app curated insights to help you learn to earn. The cool thing here with Pillar is they have private keys secured by smart contracts. Additionally, they are owned and ran by Community DAO. You can explore them on a variety of different chains, including Polygon, DAI, Binance Smart Chain, and all from one dashboard. And the cool thing here is they have some airdrops coming up. It's a partnership with Polygon and Paraswap, and you're going to be able to get your rewards in Matic. So that's kind of a big thing. But that's not all. I think the big cool component here is Pillar's staking program, which will improve the PLR, or the Pillar Unity, currently focused on unlocking the decentralized governance of the platform. Make sure and click our link below to share and learn more about Pillar. All right, let's get into it today and dive into where Bitcoin is going. Many of you, of course, have been watching. We've got a lot of people and analysts, I think, have kind of backed away from it. We see a lot of institutions starting to move and go home for the holidays. The question is, will there be any action, price action between now and the end of the year? There's still a little bit of time left. Could we see a nice Christmas or Santa rally as many people look at these? The other thing that we're going to look at is, will this potentially continue to elongate the cycle? We're going to break down all of that. I want to jump to this first story, which is 76% of Bitcoin entities are in profit. So we are seeing that the short-term Bitcoin holders took a major hit in the last correction. Bitcoin obviously saw a jump from all 6% in the last 24 hours. And if you looked at that, and maybe you have been going in that direction, what has happened again is that we've seen another set of retail investors get flushed from the system. If you look at this data coming over from Glassnode, which is, they're an analytics platform. Recently, they released their weekly Bitcoin network analysis report and outlined a noticeable decrease in the percentage of profitable Bitcoin entities. 76% of Bitcoin entities now are currently in profit, compared to over 95% in November, simply meaning people took their money and kind of went home. So while long-term holders have held on to their crypto, the short-term, this little dip and sideways action has caused a little bit of movement in the market space. And of course, that in itself continues to kind of, I think, cause a lot of distress not in the crypto market as a whole, because we're still seeing activity happening in altcoins. In fact, maybe more so in altcoins. Even though they're not parabolic runs, we are seeing good gainers. And the other aspect is we're seeing really not massive impact on the gaming, the DeFi, yes, but also the metaverse plays that are out there. So is it a scenario that Bitcoin is becoming less relevant, or is it continuously going to be the alpha dog that leads the crypto market out of the wild? We'll see as we continue to look at more kind of indicators to me, and then we're going to take a look at some investing strategies by demographic today that we pulled off of a massive group of investors that have plans for 2022. It's a very unique chart that we're going to show you on Millennial investing, Boomer, and GenX. This story here, Bitcoin will beat the dollar. This is according to Jack Dorsey, declares as Bitcoin edges toward 50K. And I think everybody knows that Jack Dorsey is a big proponent of Bitcoin. He does believe and predicts that Bitcoin will replace the greenback, displaying his unswerving support for the largest cryptocurrency out there. And I think this goes along with why Jack stepped away from Twitter. Remember recently his resignation as the CEO of Twitter, obviously still sitting on the board there, but the point is that he can really focus his time on where this project is going. And I think in general, if you look at what Square did when they changed their name to Block, and then you've got all this movement in the space with these executives that are essentially trying to assess how blockchain, metaverse, gaming, play to earn, all these things play into this, including what's happening over at Facebook/Meta. Lots happening here. You look at what the pundits are saying is that see markets losing confidence in the dollar in the coming years, primarily because the Federal Reserve pumped the trillions into the financial system. We all know that. This obviously has bolstered a lot of fears, both from a Bitcoin being looked at as a store of value for a hedge. And if you look at the United States dollar, and I want to show you a chart here. This is the US dollar. We're going to go to, this is the 50-year chart. Mind you, we'll look back in 1980 when we saw the massive run up. Let me kind of zoom up on that for you guys just a little bit here. 1979, right there. But that period of time, when you look at 1980, this right here was the period of time in which we saw massive inflationary scenarios that really played into a huge hit on the economy. But immediately after that, we saw the dollar spike. Now, this is typical of inflationary scenarios that start to push hard into the dollar as the world's reserve currency. But notice that we've seen a lot of this sideways action right here. And right here we've seen, of course, a little bit of a jump. And let me go back to this 6-month right here. Let's let it repaint that while it's doing that. And the point is that the dollar has not necessarily reacted the same way that we saw the last major put on the idea of high inflation. So will that play into continuously being, meaning Bitcoin, continuously being a hedge for the US dollar? And I think that'll be the big factor here, because you're dealing with a lot of these kind of scenarios. The other thing that is really going to play into this, I think, is FOMO. And when you look at the market as it is right now, because I think we can all agree that the market has elongated. The likelihood of this extending into Q1, Q2 is very clear now. The real question is whether or not this pushes into the latter half of 2022. And there are some analysts that are now looking at models, price models, that pushes Bitcoin and Ethereum's all-time highs into Q3. So that would be a pretty significant thing. But if you look at this article right here, BlockFi's co-founders expects upward price action, new talent, and regulatory clarity will create a bubbling FOMO atmosphere for crypto in 2022. Now, there's a couple of things that he's kind of pushing to this. One is their credit card, because they had massive interest on BlockFi's credit card rollout. And normally when you compare that to what traditional credit card entry points are, it was typically very much lower. And they had a massive run up. Let me see if I can pull this data right here. BlockFi's internal metrics show the indicative of burgeoning adoption in the first year of the rewards operation. 75,000 people signed up. Marquez pointed out that the figure is absolutely huge because most fintech companies usually see around 10,000 credit cards in their first year. So you can kind of see that that's a 7x right there. So if this is an indicator, meaning people are saying, well, wait a minute, I need to invest in Bitcoin. I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. This is something that's going to come into my portfolio in 2022. Remember 2021, a good year, but not a great year for cryptocurrency and altcoins in general. Sure, we've seen massive run-ups and we've seen long-term gains here that have continued to hold. But have we seen the parabolic moves? Not yet, according to many. So if you look at what BlockFi is saying is that, hey, we've got a lot of people going into the credit card aspect of this. We think there's going to be a very interesting scenario right here for 2022. That really plays in mind with what we're seeing as well. And I want to go to another story here, which is this piece right here on Bitcoin capitulation insight. And crypto analytics firm looks at sentiment of Bitcoin traders for the month of December. And this is going to be flying very closely to what we have proven and talked about. When was this one done? Let's see. This story was done, I believe, today. All right. So Crypto Insights, this is sentiment, examining the sentiment for Bitcoin traders to determine whether or not leading crypto assets is carving the bottom. And the analytic company says basically 119,000 Twitter followers, that sentiment among Bitcoin traders has fallen to a level not seen in 3 months. We actually reported on this 2 weeks ago when we did our Bitcoin analysis with the CPI, which is the Crypto Power Index, which gives us a leading indicator and our trailing indicator based on sentiment. Our sentiment numbers were the lowest we had seen in the last 90 days. I don't know if they picked that up from us or from their own data. But if you look back at what they're saying, it says we're seeing signs of Bitcoin capitulation after prices have remained below 50,000 for the past 6 days and majority of December. This is the most negative trader commentary since early October. It's a good sign that prices can finally bounce back after all the FUD. So they believe that capitulation has been at play, and we've seen this also from some of the stuff I just talked about, in the sense that many traders, one, have low sentiment. We're starting to see the weaker hands exit the market and reduce that percentage of Bitcoin holders that are in profit. So all of these things point to typically a super cycle about to occur, meaning something, an event, is about to happen. Now, what does that mean in terms of how would that maybe transpire? Well, that's going to be the thing we're going to answer today. But remember, when we do these market movers, the idea is we pull together some research, give you guys a bunch of data, and hopefully give you a direction on how this potentially can play out for you on your own research for what you're going to invest in. And maybe you're getting ready for 2022 and trying to get ready to, plan your overall strategy for 2022. But remember, not investment advice. This is really to help you guys get going on a research plan of where you want to go. All right, so what you're seeing here on screen is basically data coming in from about 1.8 million crypto investors or people that are planning to invest in crypto. So this is one of the largest data set hauls that we've done in recent time. I think maybe the entire year. We've done several in the hundreds of thousands, but we've never hauled over 1 million conversations in to understand where this is going. But this essentially is the Millennial adoption plan by token. Now this does not have all the tokens in there because we could have had 100 slides here. And we're probably going to do more breakouts for you on these, and we'll drop them in the Diamond Circle. So make sure and join the Diamond Circle. Just hit the link below. It's free to get into, and we drop things like this all the time. But if you look at this Millennial adoption, Millennials are born between the years 1980 and 1995. These are investors, retail investors planning on crypto entry in 2022. Bitcoin at 13.5%. Remember, there's probably going to be some crossover assets here, people holding maybe one or all of these things. Then you've got Ethereum at the number 2 spot, or not number 2, but the number 2 column there at 21.6%, Solana at 25.4%, Avalanche 20.6%, Sandbox coming in at 29.8%, and Axie coming in at 25.1%. So essentially, Sandbox is the winner here in the Millennial group. And of course, that small bubble you see over the right hand is Cardano at 2.3%. So does that mean that these are the only things that people are going to buy? No, these are the ones that percolated to the top for us. There's a lot more that came out that had nice, good single and double digit numbers. I wanted to throw in Cardano in here just so you understood the dynamic, because we have so many of our Cardano audience that want to know where Cardano was always at. There is a little bit of a spoiler here. Cardano actually wins a category here on where this is going in demographics. I want to move over to GenX. Now we're on GenX adoption. This is 1965 through 1980. And Bitcoin, I was surprised. If you look back one slide, 13.5% with millennials, but when you go to GenX, they actually drop in Bitcoin in their percentage of holdings here. So that's at 9.6. ETH is a big one, and of course Solana slid a little bit from an earlier data set that we ran on GenX. Avalanche came up and really kind of started to push a little bit of their weight around to take on Ethereum there in terms of control of potential asset classes. And then of course Sandbox comes right back in. This seems to be the winner for the metaverse, and then of course Axie, which I think continuously is probably getting a lot of action from GenX because of their kids, meaning Gen Zs who are probably playing the game and asking GenX for Axies. So there's probably that kind of awareness factor coming in from the GenX crowd. Cardano comes in at 3.9%, another single digit, but it is showing up in the GenX crowd on this. Now let's move over to boomers. Boomers move into a completely different kind of cycle here. They are not interested in metaverse or gaming. You can see Sandbox and Axie there, very low in the single digit numbers. Ethereum, Bitcoin, of course, the number 1, and then Cardano coming in at number 3 in terms of investment portfolio percentage, with Avalanche also up a little bit here. The thing that, I guess the story here is this. When you look at the big categories, I look at Bitcoin slowing down in both Millennial and GenX. And then you see the evolution of Avalanche moving into the space and taking a little bit more air than Solana. So Avalanche right here on Millennials, you've got Solana taking a little bit of a slide and Avalanche coming in. Now, why is all this important? The reason this is important is you continuously see this adoption scenario starting to play out into what's happening in Bitcoin. And I think in general, Bitcoin at some point, even though people are saying they're going to invest in these kind of strategies, the likelihood is they always fall back to 2 or 3 projects that they really trust. When times get rough, or if they see some potentials here, they may start breaking out, just like we've done throughout the year, investing in metaverse and projects within the gaming side of things in crypto on Play-to-Earn. And then, of course, all of the altcoins that we've reported on throughout the year. So you do see a lot of that flexibility. And I think that is going to be the interesting thing. But just running through these again, Sandbox and Axie not doing well in the boomer crowd, I think maybe just for either lack of interest or lack of understanding. Avalanche, interestingly enough, and Solana is somewhat holding, but ETH, Bitcoin, and Cardano being the 3 big players in that. Now, one thing to be thinking about with boomers, and this is why it's important for Bitcoin, the largest portfolios are held by boomers. The most amount of bank are held by boomers. Gen Z comes in number 2. Millennials, even though you've got this massive run up over here with millennials in Sandbox and Solana and even Avalanche and Axie, the problem is the percentage of investment access capital that millennials have available to them are not necessarily market movers. So ironically, the boomer chart is the one that you should be paying attention to, because these are the ones that will move markets. Now, can we get mass going with millennials? Yes, because you're going to see a lot more millennials investing than you will see boomers. But the boomers that invest are probably going to be 100 to 1 in terms of value to what a millennial might invest, just because of their life and their life acquisition, strategies that they have used for the last 30 years, whether it's real estate, investment capital, or other aspects of, other stocks and bonds, etc. Crypto, though, is now showing up on the boomer radar. And I think this is one of the reasons we're going to continue to see some movement here on Bitcoin and maybe a little bit of a breakout. I want to get over to the chart because I know you guys wanted to take a check of that. And I'm going to go back here real quickly just to show you the chart of where we kind of came from, because we ran sentiment back here in November. This was November 6th. When sentiment was actually running very tight and high. We were still anticipating a run up here before we saw this massive fall off. Just so we kind of remember, everyone, since November 9th, Bitcoin is down right there at 30%. So you can kind of see this has been a consistent slow grind downward. So the sentiment was still very high. The next sentiment bubble we pulled was right here on November 28th. Sentiment started falling. We saw the amplification score falling low again, and then we pulled another bubble right here on December 6th, and this is the one that really started to startle me in terms of the overall, and it aligns now with what a lot of the other research firms are pointing to, and that is that sentiment is definitely the lowest. We've seen a move toward the weaker hands being flushed out. This may be the last hurrah, I think, for Bitcoin of getting any, 1, capitulation, and 2, other than maybe leverage. Leverage could still play into this. But you see this at 63, it was very low. And amplification, first time we had seen a 59 score in months on Bitcoin. So this one definitely did concern me, and we highlighted that in our previous video. We also highlighted this section right here where we picked up the new data. And this new data is showing a little bit of a sideways action, 62.95 and a 59.63, slightly up on amplification, but a little bit of sideways action here. And we anticipate that going to be the case throughout the end of the year. The problem that I see, if anything, for Bitcoin, and this may show up, and the question will be whether or not it shows up on Christmas Eve, and that's right where we have it. This little bit of fall off that could take us down to around the 46, maybe the 45K mark, before we see a little bit of a run up right here post-Christmas. So this is essentially where we're seeing this. A lot of people are reserving. I think we're going to see the sideways action, maybe a little bit of a sell-off around Christmas. I don't think we're going to see the Santa rally unless something happens unique, even though we do have a little bit of an upward trend right here, 3 or 4 green candles that are really focused in right here in this area right here. So where we are trading currently, which is currently at 48.5. If we break 50, then that could be the run that we're talking about to get us up to this 55 number by the end of year. That's kind of our outside number for where we see Bitcoin by end of year. Now, we are continuing to look at the sentiment data, but again, this is more of a forward-looking video to understand what's happening in 2022 with the data that we just showed you in terms of the demographic breakouts. Some very interesting stuff here, I think, in the sense of if you are looking at long term, the cool thing is that there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines right now with a lot of money that are saying, maybe we need to take a look. Inflation continues to push. The hedge of the dollar is not panning out like it was in 1982 and 3 when we saw inflation grow. Is crypto the next open water for where these investments may go? All right, you guys are listening in over on the podcast. Make sure give us the kudos over there. We love the audience over on Spotify and iTunes. Thank you so much for that. Of course, the best place to really enjoy this show is right here on YouTube. And all you have to do is just search Paul Barron Network. You're going to find all these great videos. Make sure and get in on the diamond circle, hit the bell, and make sure to like a video. If there's one in here that you've started to understand, maybe for the first time getting into crypto or tech and investing, hit a few likes in there. Let us know so we understand where you guys are, where your heads are, what you want to do. And of course, if you have an idea for the show, hit it in the links below. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.